Hey everyone, and welcome into the Voice of College Football Ohio State call-in show. Normally, Zach and I start it up and just kind of leave it here sitting with the banner up, and we were like, you know what? Let's just come on and talk. And when people come in, they can start commenting and doing all that stuff. And I'm gonna go ahead and put the call-in link in the comment section. The call-in link is also in the description, so if you would like to call in, feel free to do so, and we will take your call. Zach, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Our team that I work with, we went out to eat tonight just to kind of hang out and connect a bit, and so it was definitely enjoyable. I actually feel a little sad though because I'm on this show, and I typically love being on this show, but it means I have to relive the atrocities that occurred on Saturday from 12 to 3:30, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Are we overreacting? Because they did
Um,
win, and you and I are on the Big Ten Huddle show. Like we know Nebraska. This is not a bad Nebraska team. I'm I don't know. What do you think? Are we overreacting, acting like the sky is falling?
so here's where I'm struggling with. I I said this after the
Ed,
Oregon
no.
no. But I said
Thanks,
this
Ed.
after the Oregon game is that on a one-off with no context, it's like there's no panic. Like it was a great game, everything. But because of the history of what we know of the past several years, there is a little reason to be panicked. And I would say it's similar with this, where it's not it's not what happened on Saturday in a vacuum. Like what happened on Saturday happens to a lot of teams. Like you have a bad day, and that's fine. I think it's the pattern. And like all of the concerns that I had coming into the season about offensive line, about whether the defense was really fixed, about, like they all showed up. And then even just the culture of a lot of talk with no change.
Mm-hmm.
And I even got into an I don't want to say a Twitter fight, but someone was poking at me. It was actually off of one of your comments on Twitter. He was like, fans just want to complain. And I'm like, the defense was great. And I'm like, listen, TFLs are great, but not in the not if you're going to abandon gap discipline and continue to leave your corners in bad situations, which by the corners have regressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, are we overreacting? I don't know. I think what I am reacting to is I've seen 4 years of talk without any change or with
Yeah.
very minimal change. And I think what it's not the thing that concerns me is it's not like these were changes that couldn't be made. I mean, just a
Right.
simple one. Why don't we have a kicker that can kick from 50 yards?
Yeah.
Like, why don't we have a punter that can punt for over 40?
And it'd be one thing if he was, missing those kicks every now and then, but he's never made a 50-yard kick in his career.
Right. It's why we didn't have confidence for him to kick a 55-yarder at the end of the Oregon game.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
if we had Mike Nugent, which I know Mike Nugent was like all-time great kicker, but like
Right.
if we had a kicker, even like a oh gosh, what was his name? Josh Houston back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. Like he wasn't Nugent, but he was a dang good kicker, and like
Right.
we would trust him 50 plus yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Doug makes a good point. He says Nebraska was waxed 56-7 the previous week, and they aren't that bad. Ohio State beat Wisconsin 2014 59-0, and
And
Wisconsin wasn't that bad.
that's
I
fair.
honestly I don't think too much about the Indiana game. I understand, transitive property doesn't work. I hear a lot of people say, "Well, I know
Yeah.
transitive property doesn't work, but," and it's like, "Do you?" Because you just said you think it doesn't, and then you're using it. So I don't think you do understand that. But I'm not trying to get on people. I'm just saying it's interesting to me. But we got Hummus Hero here as well. Hey Hummus, appreciate you being here.
I
But I think like for me, it's not even so much the Indiana thing. And I did a little bit of self-reflecting today, which to me is crazy that I do self-reflecting about a sport. But this is the world we live in as Ohio State fans, right? And I was thinking to myself, a lot of it to me is not so much that the Indiana and what they did and all that stuff. A lot of it is just you look at what happened last year with the team up north, them going 15-0, even though I know they cheated and I know that championship is fraudulent and I have a good feeling that, it's going to do more harm than good to their program based on what's coming from the NCAA. Even though I know all of that, I still look at this team and expect more, and I don't know if that's fair. And that's why I don't really find myself blaming the players too much.
Yeah.
Because to me, I think the talent is there. I think the players are there. I look at the snap counts and Jack Sawyer's playing 64 snaps and I'm saying, what in the world are we doing? I see Ty Hamilton is playing 60 snaps in one game. And this was a game this is a game they should have been playing at most 60% of the snaps. So that way they could be ready for Penn State. But now we're going into Penn State and it's like, these guys just played 60 snaps last game. And I don't know. For me, I think this is a talented team. I think this is it. I think this is the most talented team in college football. And then I look at the coaching staff and I say, I believe all of these coaches are good coaches, but they're not doing it right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
I just want to say my boy, Chris Ebersol, he's one of my teammates in ministry and dear friend. He just popped into the chat. Chris, call in, man. But
anybody can call in. Yeah, we got the
link
line in the description there. Feel free, or in the comments. I think I posted it. If you need it posted again, let me know. Go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
I want to address what you're saying, but Chris is one of the most knowledgeable Penn State guys out there. He's awesome. I think the thing that two things to what you're saying. I don't blame the players at all. And I think one of the things that keeps going out is people are blaming the praying culture of the team. And I just think that's nonsense. To blame this on faith is
well, and there's been some misconceptions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The thing of the players praying with the Nebraska players while Carmen, Ohio was going on. Carmen, Ohio wasn't going on. You watch that video, it's not being played in the background, and there were multiple people who were there that said Carmen, Ohio was not happening at that time. So, a lot of this is just because I'm with you. I think it's a little ridiculous. But a lot of this is just people being upset and they're looking for anything and everything to blame right now. I mean, you could put a puppy in front of an Ohio State fan, the right one right now, and they would blame that puppy for Ohio State struggles. And we need a little bit more self-control than that. But
I'll only blame the puppy if it's named Ryan Day.
I hear you.
And I think that's my thought. I don't blame the players. I don't blame their faith. I don't blame any of that. I blame the coaching staff because they continually put these players in the wrong position. And that's what drives me up a wall. And, I think Ryan Day said a quote. He's like, we have to stop talking. It's all about our action now. Dude, stop talking about national championships. I hate that they started by saying these are our goals. It's I get that you want to win a national championship. Your goal is to beat Michigan. That's your goal this year because you haven't done that the past 3 years. So before that, just shut up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Doug, my ministry is called Disciple Makers. We love what we do. It's my first love. Well, Jesus is my first love, and then doing ministry for him is my
get your priorities straight, Zach. Come on.
Yeah. Jesus, then ministry. But yeah,
All right.
that's the name of the ministry.
Let's go back to some of the comments here and what people are talking about. We have people talking about Jack Tuttle and what's going on with him. Ed Rogers said Jack Tuttle retired. Yes, CBS just reported that 5 minutes before we came on. Former Chris Olave quarterback in high school, Zach.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I didn't realize. I guess it was his fifth concussion, and that's what kind of forced the decision.
yeah, yeah. When did he get that concussion? Was it?
Maybe it was in the what was the game before Michigan State?
Yeah,
Would it have been at Illinois? Maybe that was it. Which honestly might explain some of the quarterback roulette,
yeah,
and it changes my perception a little bit of the team up north and kind of what they like, why they were doing. Like, I still don't think they managed that situation super well, but it makes a lot more sense now why they switched back to Davis Warren
yeah,
like they did.
yeah. I think Davis Warren was probably the best option. I know I kind of
Yeah.
poked fun at it a little bit at the end of the post game show for Ohio State, but you kind of poke fun at any Michigan quarterback at this point. But I think he probably was their best option, and I do commend Jack Tuttle. I think that's a smart decision. It's obviously hard. You've got guys in the NFL right now. Denzel Ward comes to mind, former Ohio State Buckeye. I think he just got his 6th concussion of his career. And I really feel for him because at a certain point, I think you need to hang it up if you're doing that. But I know for somebody like him, who, I mean, obviously football has probably been his entire life. That's a really difficult thing to do. So I can only imagine. Let's see. We got Jared here. Jared says, I think the coordinators need to be on the sidelines. There is no character, no one on the same page. That's interesting. So I like that Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly are up in the booth because of what they can see. I don't know if Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly being on the sidelines would help that much more, but I suppose it could. What's your thoughts on that, Zach?
Well, you couldn't tell that Chip Kelly was in the box on Saturday, the way he was calling plays. Or either that,
he just kept running it up the middle. He was like, "It'll work eventually," and it's like, well,
yeah,
maybe not.
I was watching a little bit of Ross Fulton, kind of his breakdowns, and one of the things that just kept standing out to me is he kept playing into the defense's hands, like whether it was running, whether it was throwing. It was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you have to be better than this. I'd be curious to hear, Jared, what the advantages of having them. It sounds like maybe you feel like that it would help the communication. I'm not sure it helps that much. I think the question that I have, though, and maybe this is some to your point too, Jared, is there a guy who can be your juice guy? Like Kerry Coombs used to be. Like Kerry Coombs was like, he was up in the box and you're like, why would you ever put that man in the box? Like, he's like 5 cans of Red Bull for everybody. Like, get him. And I feel like that, like, it was so dead on Saturday. And like, you need somebody to jack these people up. And right now they're not.
Yeah. Zach, we got another call. We got Doug on the line. Doug Shepard here to talk. So let me go ahead and there's Doug. Doug, how we doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Apologize for that one caller. That was.
That's not your fault. People,
I know,
people are just being weird. It is what it is.
Well, humans will let you down.
Yeah.
That's what they
Anyway, what's going on with you? What obviously you're thinking about comparing to the Indiana, or not you're thinking about it, but you were talking about that, and then the Wisconsin one and stuff. Anything else on your mind?
Yeah, when the Jack Tuttle thing came up, I seen somebody mentioned he'd had another concussion, and it brings back around to my point last week is that fans don't appreciate these players enough for what they sacrifice.
Yep.
I talked to Donovan Jackson. I went to the second practice. It was hot, and I knew the day before was even hotter. And I asked him how much he'd lost. He said 11 pounds.
Wow.
On the first practice. And that takes a toll on the body.
Yeah.
These guys are conditioned athletes. He said it still took him about 8 hours of recovery to feel good enough to walk to his apartment.
Yeah.
Dang.
So the
Well,
guys
and
they
I
pay a hell of
think
a price. And when they make a mistake, like all humans do, then they want to get. Everybody wants to tar and feather them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
just cut them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I try not to rip the players too much.
I
I try to
get you.
point out stuff, but at the end of the day, and that's the way that Ryan Day and Jim Knowles have said they want it, is they want you to look at the coaches and, what they're
Oh,
doing
we're
and
looking
stuff
at
like that.
them.
Yeah, we are.
Man, I watched that game. I was like, what are they doing? Some of them calls was just head scratching.
Yeah.
The only thing, me and my brother, I was like, the only thing I can think of is they're just sandbagging. Because it just.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope there's something there with them maybe not trying to show something, maybe, but I don't know. That just seems too late in the season to try and be doing that, so it doesn't really make any sense to me.
Yeah. I'll say this with that, like we ripped the offensive line performance, and I think a lot of that is not ripping the players, but ripping Justin Fry for his. But I was like, Nebraska's defensive line is pretty good. Like it's probably the best unit.
Tough. He'll play on Sundays.
Yeah. So like you got to be better.
Yeah, you're right. And the majority of our
yeah.
players on the offensive line are not going to play on Sundays.
Yeah.
They might make a practice squad or something or hang around, but they're not going to be all players. And they're just not that good. I still love them. Still going to root for them.
Absolutely.
Go
Absolutely.
Bucks, man. That's all I got today, guys.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, Doug. Like,
all right, man.
It's good perspective.
Have a good one.
See you, Doug.
Thanks,
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for calling in.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. The Ohio State offensive lines that we remember as being super great haven't always been filled with first-round talent, and to me, I think that's kind of my thing with Justin Fry and recruiting and stuff like that. Everybody wanted to act like it was that he missed out on, I can't even remember what his name, Sanders, and that was why everybody was freaking out. And, I got accused of that a few times, and I told people, I was like, no, like, I don't so much care about that. Like, you're going to lose out on top-tier recruits. It happens. Now, it seems to happen a lot with Justin Fry, but a lot of them are down south. There haven't really been too many 5-stars in Ohio or in the Midwest, so, I get that. But when you're signing classes of 3 or 4 guys, like, offensive line play is, it's kind of like gambling a little bit, where you just try to get as many as you can and try to keep as many as you can, and one of them will eventually work out and be good. And that's kind of what we saw there with Josh Simmons. Was you got one that you saw play in college, you saw he could do it, and you saw he had a talent, and then you got him out of the transfer portal and brought him in. Now that's hard to replicate a bunch of times, but that's kind of how offensive line recruiting works. Not every single 5-star is going to turn into a great player, and there's going to be a lot of 2 and 3 stars that turn into really good players. It just kind of is what it is,
Yeah. Well, and I think I really appreciate what Doug was talking about, because I think sometimes I think Josh Fryer is often a scapegoat, right? And I've talked.
He was the best offensive lineman.
He was
on Saturday, I thought.
Yeah, he was definitely better than everybody else on the line on Saturday. But he's often the scapegoat. But I think we have to remember, why is he the scapegoat? Because, and just like Zen Mikulski is a scapegoat on Saturday, it's actually not about them. It's that if Justin Fry did his job, then those guys aren't starting on this line.
Well, Josh Fryer would be playing guard, where really, that's what his size is better for.
Yeah, but because Fry hasn't recruited enough guys, and Jared makes a good point, biggest issue with O-line is development. Like, why is there a senior on our offensive line in Zen, who might be out for the season now with an injury? I don't know.
Yeah.
We probably won't find out till tomorrow.
It looks like that, yeah.
But like he was not a Big Ten quality lineman on Saturday. And so maybe that was everybody. Like, maybe we should throw that out. But it's like, that's on Justin Fry. I don't bag the kid for that. Like, this is supposed to be a national championship roster. How are you not developing these guys? Or if they're not up to snuff, how do you not have a guy better than that?
Yeah.
That's the issue. And so I need to be careful how I talk about the players, because for me, I never want, unless if a player is like legit sandbagging, like, and not like, showboating and all that. Like, unless if it's that, it's like character related, that's just very evident.
Right.
I think you have to link player performance and lack of development to the coaches, because it's their job to put their players in the best positions. And that is what this staff has continually been unable to do. And it's like, it's fireable at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the greatest examples of that is, when you saw the two guards that both pulled, and they both pulled opposite ways, and they ran into each other on that one play. I mean, you're just not going to be successful if the guys don't have a good enough grasp and a good enough understanding of what's going on, which, to Jared's point, there needs to be better communication. So whatever you're going to do that with, whether it's bringing Chip Kelly onto the field, whether it's, Will Howard needs to be doing a better job in the huddle, like, I would excuse it a little bit more if it was at Oregon and maybe he didn't hear the play right or something. But, I mean, you're at home, and let's be honest, the Ohio State crowd was not super loud that game. I'm not trying to insult anybody, that was at the game or anything, but it was not a super loud crowd. And, that shouldn't have impacted their ability to not know what the play was and stuff,
Yeah.
All right, Zach, we got Hummus Hero here, so we're gonna bring Hummus in, and then
Nice.
Chris called in right after him, so we'll bring Chris on after Hummus. Hummus, how we doing?
Hey guys, how are you guys doing?
Doing
Good.
great.
I have a question for you right off the bat before you ask, Hummus, if that's all right.
Sure.
How'd you get the name? How are you the hero of Hummus? I have to know.
Okay, so yeah, everybody, well, not everybody, but some people ask because it's a peculiar or unique thing. Hero is actually part of my last name. It's the second half of my last name. And my mom is like part Greek and Iranian. So we were always eating hummus like as kids. And one of my friends just kind of came up with the nickname, and then it kind of stuck. It was like kind of a joking around and making fun of me at first, but then like I was like, you know what, I like it. So I started using it.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep. So, but I wanted to keep talking about the offensive line. I don't know if you guys are really like technically insiders, if you have any knowledge or not, but like the thing that I don't understand is Carson Hensman. I just think that he was clearly one of the best five like last year. I mean, that's why he was playing, and he was like pretty good. You know what I mean? And then we know that something seemed to occur at the end of last season. But I don't know if you guys know what's going on with that situation, because it just seems like he should be playing now that Simmons is out. They should reshuffle it around and get him back into the lineup. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself an insider. I do know somebody that works in the NIL foundation, so I get a little bit here and there, but nowhere near what the guys that get paid for it get and stuff. So I'm not going to put myself on their level at all. Honestly, I've not heard very much about Carson Hensman. I've asked about him, and there's not really been any news. Honestly, it's just been kind of eerily quiet on that end. He's practicing, he's doing all these things, like he's not on the injury reports. And I don't know if there was that podcast he did last year. I don't know if he got suspended for an entire year for that, and we just don't know about it. I don't know. Surely that's not the case. I'm laughing about it because I think that's ridiculous, but there's obviously something going on. I really hope it's not anything, personally for him that's wrong. I hope that, maybe he's just the backup center and they want him to focus on that. I don't know. What do you think, Zach?
Well, I have two thoughts. One is I would be curious what Ryan Day says tomorrow, because I think the beat is going to ask some hard questions. They typically don't ask a ton of hard questions, but I was listening to Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, and I mean, they were fiery, and Bill will probably ask some hard questions. Doug will, if Doug is there, he will definitely ask hard questions.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of them. The other thing that comes to mind, like I just think of Harry Miller. And I remember for a year, we were like, why isn't Harry Miller playing? Like he was clearly one of the best 5. What's going on? And he was going through a mental health issue that was significant. And so I totally agree. I'm shocked that he hasn't been anywhere in the conversation, but I also want to be sensitive to this day and age, especially because like I thought he played well throughout the year, but like he got a lot of agita for for some of his play last year. And like that, like if you're not used to it, like I believe he was a freshman last year, so I'm not trying to, I don't want to speculate. I realize that's moving into speculation territory, but I could imagine if there's something going on like that, they're probably going to keep it quiet for a while.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And something I hadn't considered, especially I probably should have, knowing what happened with Harry Miller. So it could be something like that, or maybe it's just once again, it's all purely speculative, but maybe it's an attitude issue and he just can't, get it right or something like that. But I don't know. I just look at it and maybe it's out of desperation as a fan, like looking at it, like, come on, we gotta have somebody step in there and shift this around and get it right, because you look at this roster and how talented this all is, and without that offensive line, that offense just isn't going to go. And I mean, not having Kazmarek out there to run block was showing, and it's troubling when you look at it, but hopefully they get it together and are able to at least provide enough protection to allow the passing game to function. I don't know if they're going to be as dominant in the run game as they were. Not having those two out there, I think, is just something you're not going to be able to replace. But I'll let you guys take another call, but I also think just one more little thing that I think as a fan, not a coach in any way, don't really understand the game, never played the game, but it just seems like to me that Ryan Day and the offensive mentality needs to go back to more of the throwing to open up the run game. I mean, when I was watching the game against Nebraska, it's like it was almost just like beating your head against the wall or whatever you'd want to say with the run game. It's like it's clearly not working. And then you look at the end of the game with all those 3 and outs. They only passed the ball, what was it, like 16 or 18 times, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only 48 total plays, and 45 if you actually take away the final 3 where they kneeled down. Which is just crazy to me. You know what I mean? It's like, and I know the game's shorter still, but like 45 total plays on offense. Yeah. And I mean, they could have got at least a couple more first downs. I'm not saying that each of those drives where they went 3 and out would have resulted in points. But at a certain point, like, don't you just like admit this is our strength now? This is our strength. Maybe we were balanced before when we had a solid run blocking tight end and a really good left tackle, but now we don't. And now we need to work more on quick passing and see where that goes. And then, they'll have to respect that. And then maybe we can start to run. But I don't know. I'll let you guys elaborate on that, what I said. And thank you for taking my call. I'll let you talk to somebody else.
Thanks, Hummus.
Yeah, Hummus, thanks for calling in. I think you make a lot of good points.
Right.
And I think even one thing that surprised me was it was 4 targets total for Jeremiah Smith. And I'm like, even if it's a bubble screen or something, like, got to get that man touches.
Yeah, you have to. The run game doesn't work well when only the running backs are good, and the passing game doesn't work well when only the wide receivers are good, and vice versa with the O-line and the quarterback as well. I do think that the running game has some advantages with both your quarterback and your running backs being able to run, but obviously it starts up front with the trenches. So if your offensive line is not there, you have to use the passing game to open up for the run game. And that's kind of always been my very simple thought on it. Whichever one you do better, use that one to open up for the other one. And that's kind of been my thought. So, all right, Zach, got your friend Chris here with us. Chris, Penn State fan. I'm glad you wore red for the occasion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel like I just had dinner with Zach, so I had to throw this on. But don't
I
worry,
just say
I got
you
my
weren't
Penn
wearing
State
that at
hoodie
dinner.
right here. So, but yeah, it's cool to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for calling, Chris.
Yeah, man.
I was
Um,
curious. I know a little bit of Zach's background on wanting to jump into the podcasting world. JR, what was it like for you? When did you decide this was a route you wanted to do?
Well, I work in ministry as well. I'm a communication director for a church, and my every guy on staff there kind of has a side gig that they do,
Sure.
and all their side gigs are like construction and different stuff like that. And I did a little bit of that stuff, and then finally I was like, you know what, I want to try to get into something else and kind of make my own path for it, do my own thing. So
Sure.
it's been it's not been paying super well for the first 2 years, but I decided I wanted to kind of take a leap into it and give it a shot, and things just keep getting better and better. So, and Zach obviously helps with that a lot. So I try to keep him around.
Sure. Cool. No, it's been fun listening to you guys. I appreciate Big Ten Huddle. So, it was cool hearing Hummus
Hero. Yeah.
Hummus Hero. I appreciated his thought, I guess, behind or question behind the thought of why Ohio State seemingly got away from what was working last week with why did they not just stick to the pass game? It seemed like they just kept. I think it was Joel Klatt made the point. Maybe they were just trying to continue to run to try and figure it out for future weeks, or they were playing for future weeks or something like that. But it seemed like they got whatever they wanted through the air, and they kept running into a brick wall. I was just curious, your guys' thoughts on that.
I have one quick thought, and then I'll let Zach go. So my quick thought is, I feel like Ryan Day is one of those guys, especially now with all the kind of toughness talk and stuff like that, that he is just going to tell his team, look, get it done. Which I like that to a certain extent. I don't like that when the game is in question and when you're down, in the fourth quarter. But the defense was playing well, and then you had that interception. And I feel like after the interception, that's when things changed a little bit more. That's when you saw Will Howard take the ball more and run with it, and felt like he had some more of that freedom, and they weren't just trying to run it up the gut. So, I don't know what the issue is with that there, but. That's kind of my thought is that, maybe he was just trying to instill toughness on the offensive line or something and say, we're going to run it and you guys are going to have to block. I don't know. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the thing that drives me nuts the most just about all of it is it's not like run pass ratio. It's more the situational awareness. So even that first drive, you're on I think you start at the 35 and it's 2nd and 2 and you drop back and take a sack, or I think it was a sack, or either that or it was a blown up run. I forget which one it was, but it was like, man, it could be 3rd and 2, but instead it's 3rd and 10, it's 3rd and 9. And then they throw it to get it 4th and short, which again is bad situational awareness by Abuka, because he could have just leaned forward and gotten the first down. And then they try to run it and they can't get the first down. I felt like that was more the microcosm of it. It's not just that they can't run, it's that they're situationally unaware and they put themselves in bad spots. And so on 2nd and 2, I'm like, man, run a QB sneak now, or and they the offensive line had moments. I mean, they ran 5 yards on a QB sneak, which was just absurd. So do stuff that works.
Yeah.
Just do that thing. But I feel like they make it hard for themselves situationally all the time. And sometimes it is the players, like against Oregon, Travion, I love Travion, but he sidestepped and rather than going for a first down, and it cost him a drive. And but sometimes it's play calling, and you're like, why on 2nd and short are you doing something that puts you in danger to get further behind the chains? Just get the first down.
Sure.
And I get it because they want to be creative, they want to take shots. I understand that. But often I feel like when they try to get creative, especially on second and third and short, they just like it often backfires on them. And I feel like that really short circuits their play calling.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's helpful. I honestly didn't really get to see much of the Ohio State Nebraska game, but was score checking. And I looked at I think I was listening to, I don't know, some podcast, probably the Cover 3 podcast. Maybe it was you guys. I don't know. It's like a bunch of podcasts I got going on. And made the point that like Ohio State got away from the passing game. And I was just curious about that. Because then I looked at the stats and I was like, oh, Will Howard seemed to do well. Yeah. And I think, Zach, you mentioned like only 4 targets or catches for Jeremiah Smith. I'm like, how do you not get that guy the ball? Like, how do you not make that a point every drive or every other drive? Like, he needs to get targeted. So I also didn't realize they only ran, I think, how much here? I said like 45 plays, 47 plays. That's a little shocking.
Yeah, I think that was their lowest play total since Minnesota 2014, I think is what I heard. There might have been another one that was 45 in like 2021 or something like that. But that was a game where like they had like 6 80-yard touchdowns or something like that. So it's like when you score that fast,
Yeah.
It wasn't offense is struggling and getting 3 and outs. It was 3 plays and you're out because you scored a touchdown. Chris, I did have a question for you really fast. We have some people talking about it in the comment section. I don't know how much you're up on this. I know of a couple injuries that Penn State has. Obviously, Drew Aller went out of the game against Wisconsin. I think the right tackle also went out of the game. Rusi. I think he is one that is what came in for him. I think he also came in the UCLA game. Denied Dennis Sutton, stuff like that. I mean, how concerned are you with some of these injuries coming into the game? And are there maybe any other injuries that you know about that maybe a common fan wouldn't know about that you would mention?
Sure. Yeah, it doesn't seem to me, at least, speaking of denied Dennis Sutton and Drew Aller, it didn't seem like there was super serious injuries. So, I mean, it's Drew at least is listed as a game time decision. I was surprised. I mean, I think I texted Zach, my dad, Zach and I are in a group chat, and I was actually driving, or my wife was driving home Saturday night from our parents' house. And so I was like trying to watch the game on my phone in the back seat, but my wife and my sister-in-law are in the front seat having a conversation. We have like a bunk bed in the back of the car. So I'm holding my dog, trying to watch the game with no volume, listening. So that was like the whole first half of the game. And then we finally get home. The second half is started. I'm trying to catch up. And I'm like, why is Bo Prabula in the game? Like, I didn't even understand what happened. So it wasn't until I got to go back and see. And honestly, I didn't feel like it looked that bad for Drew on the sack. But I don't know. I feel like with lower body injuries, especially for a quarterback, like mechanics are so much a part of everything. I don't know if Franklin just wanted to rest him for the Ohio State game. But, like, Penn State was losing at that point too. Like, it's not like the game was in the bag. So I don't know. I'm just thankful. I was reminiscent of a couple years ago. Starting quarterback goes down against Iowa, and we have a backup comes in. I think Iowa was like number 3, and we were number 2 or something like that a number of years ago. And our backup comes in, and I think we like lost yards for the rest of the game. Like everything was off. We couldn't even snap the ball. It was in Kinnick. And I was like, oh my gosh, at least our backup quarterback is doing things. Like we're going forward. We have a chance. But in terms of like injury updates, I don't really have much to share.
Bo Prabula is a really good backup quarterback. I felt like he played really well, especially after, I mentioned it on the show, after Jalen Reed got that interception. That was kind of the juice they needed. So honestly, at this point, Zach, I don't know how you feel about it, but Drew Aller, Bo Prabula, to me, it doesn't matter which one starts. They're both going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, I think Bo definitely opens up the run game because it's another threat that Drew doesn't have. But I feel like with Bo, he was accurate, but there was no deep passes. So I think against the team like Ohio State, you can just crowd the line a little more and play more safe defense maybe. because Bo's not going to hurt you deep, and we don't have receivers that are going to hurt you deep. So,
yeah. I'm curious, Chris, who would you say is, like, I have my thoughts, but I'm curious, who do you think your best overall receiver is in that room?
Yeah. I don't know, because playing, college football, put Omari Evans out there, the speed guy, and just have him go. But it doesn't really work like that in the real world. So, I mean, overall receiver, like Tyler Warren's a dude, but he doesn't play receiver. He plays tight end. So, I think we have a bunch of – I think it's very similar to last year, honestly, with Keandre Lambert-Smith. Like, we have a bunch of, like, 2, maybe 3 receivers on a lot of rosters, and we don't really – like, our guy is a tight end. So, yeah. I mean, I think Fleming could be number 1 if he could catch the ball more consistently.
And that drop on third down, that was killer when he dropped that pass on third down, and then it led to the fumble on the QB sneak, and I was like, oh man, that was such a rough sequence for them there.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I would probably go with Harrison Wallace. Clifford, I feel like, is pretty consistent, like a good, like with catching the ball, but he's got like athletic limitations. So, but
it's a nice way to put it.
At that level, though, like, he would run circles around me. So, like, here's me saying athletic limitations for a division.
If he has athletic limitations, you and I were like...
Exactly, yeah. So, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think we have there's not a receiver again. And I think that's what's hurt Penn State the last couple of years. There's not really a receiving threat on our team.
You don't have a Dotson or a Parker Washington or a Allen Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Not really been great Penn State wide receivers since, correct me if I'm wrong, but Josh Gaddis was the wide receiver coach, right?
Yeah, Gaddis. Yeah, before he went, I think he went somewhere before Michigan. But, I mean, and I think too, like, we haven't, like, our highest rated receiver that comes to memory was like Justin Shorter a couple classes back, like a number of classes back, was at least on 247 was like the number 1 ranked receiver coming out and just didn't do anything. I think he ended up transferring to Florida. Just didn't really amount to anything. But I think he was in the class with, I think it was 2018 with Micah Parsons and Ricky Slade. But yeah, I don't know. Like, even, following recruiting rankings, we're never really in it for the big receivers. I feel like we don't super go after huge receivers, like highly rated. We usually end up in the mid 4-star range, 100 to 300 range.
Mm-hmm. So you might get a good defensive lineman. You guys are trying to flip that Zahir Mathis from Ohio State. He went on a visit to Ohio State this weekend, but apparently he's got a lot of friends over at Penn State. So you guys definitely, maybe you don't recruit the receiver so well, but you do a good job recruiting the lines of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think actually a guy, I mean, I've heard a lot of smoke about him. I think a guy that Penn State potentially wants more is current Michigan commit Andrew Olesh, is a tight end from Pennsylvania as well. I haven't heard as much on Zahir Mathis. I have heard a lot more about Andrew Olesh.
He's kind of a quiet recruitment. Obviously, Ohio State fans don't really hear much about him. That was kind of the most we heard this last week was him coming on his visit.
Yeah.
And then I saw an article written on On3 about him, and I was like, wow, that's one of the first ones I've seen. And
yeah. Well, and honestly, like, Penn State hasn't got top guys out of Philly. So some of the better guys out of Philly we usually miss on. So, but
all right, Chris, anything else Penn State, Ohio State related you want to get to before we move on?
Yeah, sure. Last question, I think I asked it in the chat. Didn't realize I was not calling in, so now I'm up to date on that. But I know at least Zach last year mentioning like concerns about the Penn State Ohio State matchup. As a Penn State fan, I think I hear that and I'm like, whatever, like same story. What maybe adds concern for you guys this year that's unique from last year? Because I look at the rosters and I'm like, yeah. So love to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Go ahead, Zach.
I don't know if we have a left tackle.
Sure.
And I think Abdul Carter versus either of our tackles is trouble.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously the left tackle was the biggest thing. I'm interested to see what the coaching does and what happens there. Chip Kelly's been pretty good so far. I mean, not pretty good. I think he's called some really good games so far. And this last game just didn't look like anything he was doing. So I hope it was just a one-off. I hope, there's a lot of talk about how it's just kind of a weird day for everybody. So, we'll see. But, whenever you struggle right before a big game, that's always going to be your biggest thought. It was the same way with Oregon. We thought about, oh, we got off to a slow start against Iowa and stuff like that. And now we're thinking about, oh, the offensive line didn't look great and the coaching was, an issue there and stuff. So, as long as we don't have any targeting calls, I think I'm okay because those seem to be an issue for Ohio State as well.
Sure.
But
yeah, I did see that. Saw that a lot on my feed.
yeah, that was a tough. But they got it overturned, so Arvell Reese will be back full game. He won't have to miss any time, so that'll be nice.
Cool.
That is big. He's a good player. But,
yeah, sweet. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Good luck the rest of the show, and have a good rest of your night.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for calling in.
Yep.
Have a good one.
See you, bro.
Thank you to Chris for coming in and calling in about that and talking some Penn State. Nice to talk a little bit about the injuries there and kind of see what their thoughts are. We got David Greenshield, Dr. Buckeye, here with us. David,
Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening? OH.
IO.
There we go. Just want to talk about this matchup. I got to a little bit with Mark on Sunday. I'll kind of talk about that, maybe expand upon, what I saw and have some other thoughts too, especially about this matchup. It's interesting. I had a conversation with Mark right after the Iowa game, and the conversation pertained to how much this offensive line has improved since last year. Because to be fair, I didn't think we were going to rush for over 200 yards against Iowa. I actually thought that was a fairly decent accomplishment after that game. Yeah. I mean, if you'd have told me going into Iowa we're going to rush for over 200 yards, I'd have been like, well, that's impressive. And, I really thought that's what gave me confidence going into Oregon and that was the thing about this team coming into the season, gentlemen. I don't know, the best Ohio State teams I've seen, and I go back to, actually, well, I'm going to date myself. I'm getting older, so that's neither here nor there. But since the 80s have been teams that have obviously been balanced. They can run it and throw it. You know what I mean? And that's what I thought with this team. I thought this would be a balanced offense. Mm-hmm. And it's just crazy how an injury to a tackle position and, can just – and I just think it's just that, though, that all of a sudden we can't run the football because Simmons isn't in there. It just, I think some of this is play calling. I got to be real with you. And I don't know if you guys have already addressed this. I addressed this with Mark on Sunday. It amazes me that a top 300 recruit, which Zen was, and a guy that's been in this program for 4 years can't just play reasonably well at tackle. Is that lost? I mean, I've heard about the recruiting misses, but I've been posting this constantly. To me, this is a development issue. Yep. I don't know if you guys have talked about that or what you guys' thoughts are on that, but I know we've had some misses in recruiting, but I mean, a top 300 player 4 years in the program can at least be reasonably decent. I don't think that's asking for the sun, the moon, and the stars. I mean, your guys' thoughts.
Yeah. We talked about it a little bit. I think one of the biggest problems with it is the lack of volume in recruiting. I think there's a lot of guys that are just kind of hit or miss sometimes. And when you're only bringing in 3 to 4 guys, I mean, there's only so many spots on the offensive line to develop those guys. And if you don't hit on all of those guys, then you're obviously out of luck. So, but also development does need to be spoken about. I do think, you can also point to other things. Paris Johnson, even though his entire career wasn't with Justin Fry, he did get developed into a first-round offensive lineman. Josh Simmons still is being talked about if he goes to the draft as like a top 25 pick in the draft, even with that injury, which to me, that's saying something if they're willing to draft a guy with that injury. Donovan Jackson, All-American this year. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are concerns about the development because you look at Tegra and this game and, he didn't play his best game and, Austin Sareveld, he's been good coming in, but obviously, he's not somebody you want to have to put in there to be a starter. So I'm not completely on like the there's zero development on the offensive line, because I have seen development, but it's just not consistent enough for me, and I have to attribute some of that to the volume of how many guys they bring in as well.
Yeah, I think that's well said, JR. Because it's like they did a great job with Simmons. Like Simmons
Yeah.
was not a highly rated guy. They went out, identified him, and like, I mean, from game 1 a year ago to the Oregon game, I mean, he was getting first round buzz, and he was nowhere near that a year ago.
Right.
But I agree, it's the consistency. Like, there's no reason that there shouldn't be a 6th or 7th offensive lineman that we can throw in there to play. I think, to your words, David, like, at least reasonable.
Yeah.
Like Zen, I mean, he was just tripping all over himself all game.
Right.
And like, I don't blame the kid. Like, I think he tried hard. He played hard for as long as he was, but he was not a Ohio State caliber lineman, at least in this football game.
Yeah.
And I have concerns about how they're going to line up next or this week against Penn State, because like, if you throw, there's been some talk about throwing Donovan Jackson to left tackle. I think, JR, you put out one where it's like Tegra would go over to left tackle and Donovan would stay at left guard. And
He was
Tegra
recruited as a tackle. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I don't think is a bad idea, but like, Tegra has been really up and down. Saraveld has been up and down. Honestly, Donovan Jackson has been up and down. Like, as great as we thought he would be, I don't think he's lived up to the 5-star billing. And again, I'm not saying that to denigrate him. I'm just saying, and honestly, I think that's actually one of my critiques of the Ryan Day era, is very few 5-star players have actually lived up to that billing.
Right. Where I was going to go with this is, I mean, if you think about it, they had the 10-year anniversary of the 14 team. And go back and look at that 14 offensive line. It was not loaded with 5 stars, gentlemen.
Yep.
I mean, it was there were some Ohio 3 stars on there. And I mean, the interesting with the Urban is he flipped the dynamic in recruiting. We all know about this. And I looked at the numbers, maybe you guys have in the past, I have, where Tressel was 60-40 Ohio, and then Urban flipped it to 40-60 and nationalized the recruiting, which has been well documented, obviously. But what's interesting? I've always said this. The national championship team had, I believe, 14, maybe 15 starters if you count Cardell Jones from the state of Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. I'm interested that Urban never mentions that, but that's neither here nor there. But, in any case, a lot of those were not highly recruited Ohio kids that developed into pretty good offensive linemen. The Pet Elflines of the world. I mean, that can't be done anymore. Are we just, I mean, like the Norwells, the Linsleys, the Mewhorts that he was handed to start the 12 and 13 teams, were not high recruits. They developed into NFL players. I don't know what you guys, what are you guys' thoughts on that? I mean, am I missing something here?
No, I think you make a lot of good points. The thing that I've noticed in the trend of Justin Fry recruiting is that he goes after very prototypical guys. If you are not a certain, and this happens in other places on the recruiting staff as well. Ryan Day has a rumor out there that he doesn't accept quarterbacks if they're not 6'4" or taller. Which, there's quarterbacks in Ohio that have shown to have really nice arm talent, but he's not really considered him because they've been 6'2", 6'1", and that's made some people upset. I don't necessarily get as upset with that one because I feel like Ryan Day has kind of, earned his ability to be picky with quarterbacks. But the thought process there with Justin Fry seems to be, I don't know this for sure, but seems to be that he will not go after a guy unless he is like the exact right prototype. That mean, over 290 pounds coming out of high school, 6'6", 6'7" at the tackle position, that kind of stuff. Obviously can be a little bit shorter for the guard and center position, but that seems to be something that is limiting him in recruiting as Ohio as much as he is. I forget who the Ohio offensive lineman was, but he didn't even have an offer until recently. Was it Guthrie? I think it was. He didn't have an offer until recently, and they wanted to see how his game tape apparently was his junior year because they didn't feel like he had the best size. And one of the reasons why this is known a little bit more is because with Charles Bentley, he is he's not an offensive line coach for a school. I don't think he runs his own like private program. He might be one now, but he was talking about some of this stuff on a podcast. I forget where it's at. If I remember, I'll say it. But he was talking about some of this stuff and just talking about how, maybe a player doesn't have the right prototype, but they have the right heart and that kind of stuff. And that seemed to be a little bit of a hint that, there's some dissatisfaction with offensive line coaches and stuff like that in Ohio, that Justin Fry is not going after guys simply because of their size, even though they see them playing well enough. Yeah. Zach, what's your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, going to your point earlier about the line for Urban Meyer, one of the things that always impressed me with his lines was their ability to shuffle and slide. So you brought up Pat Elfine.
Yeah.
Well, both he and Billy Price were able to slide from guard to center when need be. You had Jacoby Boren, who was undersized at center, but that dude, like, he wasn't an NFL guy, but that dude was essential to that national championship run.
Agreed.
I mean, and he was a nasty guy. That's the Borens. They are, they were tough as nails. And, I don't think you see that. Like, I think that's even something that's been talked about with the culture of this team right now, is you don't necessarily see a nasty streak in these guys. You do see some prototypes like Paris Johnson. Paris Johnson is a stud in the NFL.
He's generational though, kind of, what I mean? Yeah.
But it's a lot of who's your enforcer on that line?
Yeah.
Is there one?
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, I don't know if you guys took a look at it. I never took a look at Fry's track record. Correct me if I'm wrong. Fry was at UCLA with Chip Kelly before he got to Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. He was his O-line coach. Yeah. I don't know. Did he develop a lot of offensive linemen at UCLA that went to the NFL? Because one would think that that's going to be one of the first things you're looking at if you're going to hire any position coach. What is your track record of development at the school you were at before? One would think that would be a rather obvious thing to look at. And I don't know if you guys took a look at it. I have not. So I'm kind of asking
really fast.
Yeah. Asking as a question that I don't know the answer to. So I'm just,
Yeah, I can look really fast and come back to you here in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, I kind of felt that, like everybody else, that after that Cotton Bowl, and that, he was on the thinnest of ice, with Day. He had to be after that Cotton Bowl performance. That's as bad an offensive line performance as I've ever seen. I will say, by the way, you guys start probably watching Ohio State football, early 2000s?
90s.
I started right after the national championship, 2002. So
okay.
I was
darn.
Okay.
Missed that one.
Yeah, I was late 80s. I was actually caught the tail end of the Bruce era. But what I was going to say is, you guys probably remember a few of the trips to Happy Valley where, Tom Ali wrecked our game. You know what I mean? I'm with you guys. That's my fear this week. Or, what was that 08 game they played in Columbus? What was that guy, Maben? Remember that name?
From Aaron Maben.
Yeah, Aaron Maben. Who did he abuse in that game? Was that Adams or one of those guys at tackle?
Was it Shugarts?
Was it Adams or
Shugarts?
Right. He totally made NFL. He made like Taco Charlton money off of that game, I think, by the way. I don't want to bring up a Taco Charlton reference, but you know what I mean? By the way, you know what? Was Mahalski as bad as Isaiah Prince at times this past weekend, or is that too?
That's
the one game sample size would seem to give it, but yeah, I think you're right, probably.
The Isaiah Prince reference is so. My mom, she still remembers infamously Isaiah Prince, and anytime there's a false start in any NFL game, she's like, "Was that Prince?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure he's out of the NFL now." but like that's how much he has embedded.
She's got
he's been
PTSD
embedded
from it.
in my mom's mind.
Well, that's what they said is Charlton owed his entire NFL contract to Prince. You know, that's that. You know, you go back to the 16 game.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh.
where it was like a turnstile. You
Oh.
know, the one thing with the Meyer era is the offensive line play for the first 16 it dipped, you know, a little bit. You know, that was the year where, you know, you saw it towards the end of the year. And then, of course, in the Clemson debacle where, you know what I mean, where I think the offensive line, but the first 4 years of the Meyer era, I thought the offensive line play was really good to almost great.
Oh yeah.
You know, although, you know, his last year, I thought with the Haskins team, the offensive line play, I thought was a little bit shaky that year. And, but you know, that's the other question I asked. When is the last time you'd say Ohio State bottom line had the best offensive line in the Big Ten?
I think 2019.
Not in the Ryan Day era.
No, he got it right. I think I would say 19. We had the best offensive line in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But and a lot of that was Urban's recruits.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
All right,
They got
David,
lucky
I
go
got
ahead, I'm
some NFL players here for you. So John Gaines got drafted by the Cardinals in the 4th round. He was recruited by Justin Fry and did play under him in 2021. That was his first year starting. According to PFF, he was not very good. He improved substantially in 2022 after Justin Fry left. That's when Chip Kelly was still there. Then you have also Sean Ryan. He was drafted in the 3rd round by, it looks like, Green Bay in 2022. And that looks like, one more. Antonio Maffei drafted in the 5th round by New England in 2023. So looks like all 3 of those guys played under him. Justin Fry. The last one that was drafted before them was Colton Miller in 2018. He would have played right before Justin Fry had gotten there. So looked like Justin Fry produced 1 for sure, possibly 2 draft picks for the offensive line when I was at UCLA.
Yeah, but as you can see, not necessarily high draft picks, whereas
right. Yeah, highest one was 3rd round. It looks like, yeah.
I mean, I went into confidence this season, and you know, I still have confidence. The other point I was making, guys, how much do you think this can be remedied by Chip Kelly play calling, which I think he just totally freaked out once Mahalski just couldn't hold up, and I think he just was like, you know, I don't know why he went to slam the ball into the line time instead of just trying to maybe go with a quick passing game, or is it illegal to run a jet sweep with Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka? I mean, you know, those plays have worked in the past. Smith ran that jet sweep against Sparty for a touchdown, and Egbuka scored on a jet sweep with the touchdown before.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I really feel like he and Ryan Day just told the offensive line, we're going to run the ball up the middle, and if you guys don't like it, keep blocking, and it's going to happen. Like, because you're exactly right, David. Like, they've done all of these things, and then they just either refused or forgot how to do them later on, and they aren't things that are super complicated that the offensive line has to know how to do. When it comes to a jet sweep with Jeremiah Smith, I feel like that actually kind of gives them a break for a play a little bit to where they're not having to open up a hole. So I don't know. It really feels like to me that the bad play calling was almost intentional. I don't know if that's just the optimistic Ohio State fan in me, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah. I do wonder too, because I think they're one of the strengths of this team actually has been the receivers blocking.
Yeah, good point.
And so I wonder if part of the game plan going into Penn State is attacking out wide.
Yeah.
Because I'd be curious to hear Chris's thoughts on this. I think the corners are good. I don't think they're great for Penn State.
It's a good point.
I think the front 7 is more their strength. And so maybe you can open some things up offensively, attacking wide, and then going deep off of that. But
that's a great point. I mean, what are Trey Henderson's best runs? They're always to the perimeter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like every big run Trey Henderson has ever popped has always been to him getting outside the tackle. It's never been running, you know, in between the tackles and popping one up the middle. It's always get Trey to the perimeter. If you get Trey to the perimeter, that's when he's going to hit you and hurt you. And, you know, I agree with you. That was the one good thing, because every great run, every big run we had back to the Zeke years was because we had good downfield blocking by our wide receivers. And, that's our best hope to run the ball. I'm not as confident in between the tackles against this D line. It's got to be work the perimeter. I do wonder if they'll incorporate a little bit of Q run. I don't want to go back to like JT Barrett Braxton days where it was like all the time and it was like a crutch almost. But I mean, they could stand to maybe run it a few more times on short yardage. And please do not slam the ball into the line on 3rd and 1 with Trey Henderson when they're all stacked up inside. And you basically are sending him a telegraph to say, hey, we're going to run the ball right up the middle on 3rd and 1 with Trey Henderson. We'll send you a telegram, telling you we're going to do it.
I would be a fan of
Totally
what the
agree.
Eagles have done, which is on 3rd and 3, they QB sneak it for 2 or 3 yards. And then on 4th and 1, they QB sneak it again.
Yeah.
Because their quarterback is just so good at it that you can't stop him. Which Will Howard, I don't think he's been stopped on a QB sneak once yet this year. So
no, he's got the size too.
Yeah. I would say it's harder to stop a 6'4", 240-pound man QB sneaking than it is a 5'11", 205 tailback who's starting 5 yards back.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what you guys' gut is on this. I mean, if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago, I thought we would have beaten them by 10 to 14 points. Even if you'd asked me right after Oregon, I would have thought 10 to 14 points. Yep. I don't know about you, but I'm 50-50. I'm closer to.
If it was home, I would feel better, but
yeah,
I don't feel great since it's on the road. Even though it's at noon, I don't feel great.
Yeah. I will most likely pick Penn State to win.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I mine is like 21-20, where I mean that shows you my lack of confidence, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's the thing with Penn State. Number one, I don't think their defense is as good as it was last year. You make a good point. I don't think they're saying. I mean, now their defense last year, I think, was top 2 or 3 in the country.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's at that level. They don't have a Chop Robinson on the D line, although he got hurt last year when we played him. And so any news on that Sutton? Is Sutton expected to play? He got hurt against.
I
think he'll be fine. I think he will. Yeah, he didn't play, but he also didn't look like he was in an excruciating amount of pain. And that I listened to a podcast today by Lions 24/7. They acted like they expect him to be questionable, but most likely play.
Okay.
I do wonder though, because it looked like it was a groin injury, and I wonder if he plays. I wonder does that limit his effectiveness at all?
Yeah. See, I think that you're right. It's all pass pro. I mean, can they hold up? And that's the whole thing. But I mean, they can do some things. I mean, they can do a quick passing game. Hell, they can max protect. Just leave extra blockers in and give the tackles some help. I know that's less people in the pattern, but do what you have to do. Yep. And I think here's the thing. I think they can win this game by getting to 21 points because I don't know what you feel about this Penn State offense. See, I think Aller's going to play. And I think Aller is. Would you say Aller's better than he was a year ago? You think he's that much better?
Yeah.
I do too. But here's the thing. Nobody on their perimeter scares me like Oregon's perimeter people.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon had probably, I don't know, top 2 or 3, 4, maybe top 5 receivers in the country if you ranked them as a group. After us, I think they're probably somewhere up there. Who at wide receiver scares you for Penn State?
Yeah,
really nobody, and that's what we were talking about with Chris. I mean, really Julian Fleming is their second best wide receiver probably, and he would never sniff the field on Ohio State or Oregon with those two. And I'm not trying to disrespect Julian Fleming. I appreciate what he did here, and I think he was, really tried hard and gave it his all. But unfortunately, injuries, he was never the same, and he's having trouble catching the ball.
Yeah, I think it's Tyler Warren, and that.
Yeah.
That's not good because I think Ohio State might struggle with linebackers and coverage, but in terms of getting down the field deep, I do think that is something that we won't have to deal with nearly as much as we did against even against Nebraska, because they don't have physical receivers.
Yeah, Landis made the point on his podcast that he actually thought Nebraska's receivers might be better than Penn State's.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is actually saying something. I mean, it's a controlled passing game. They throw the ball to the tight end and to the running backs. You know, that's not an offense I see dropping like 35 on us or something like an Oregon could. That's why I think first to 20 could win this game is kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Penn State has struggled to have the lead in the first half in a lot of their games, because they rely on their defense so much, and for their defense to create turnovers and create opportunities for the offense. I'm not trying to disparage the offense and say it's bad, but they do require time throughout the game in order to do things. I think they've only led at halftime against 2 teams so far this season, one of them who was Kent State. So
Right.
If Ohio State can get the offense figured out and get it figured out quickly, and they can go up by 2 or 3 scores in the first half, I like Ohio State's chances a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they can contain Allen and Singleton too. The one thing is I think we can play the run pretty well. But yeah, I'm 21-20, and that's obviously, you can tell by my score prediction, I'm not extremely confident. But I just think our playmakers make a few more plays. Hey, maybe we see JT Tuimoloau magic from 2 years ago too.
Yeah.
His 2 best games have been probably against Penn State, because he played well against Penn State last year.
Yeah.
So
he does like Happy Valley. So we'll see. I'd be happy.
yes. So you said Penn State. What are you thinking? You think Penn State?
Yeah, I'm thinking probably Penn State. I'll make my pick tomorrow, but I'm leaning that way right now.
Okay.
I will say though, David, you've given me some good helpful fodder as I think about it. So I'm not settled on my pick yet. I'm leaning that way, but
no, I think it's 50-50. I mean, if I'm picking 21-20, I'm thinking it's 50-50. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm just saying that Emeka or Jeremiah Smith or one of our backs make a play late, and our defense holds up well enough, because their offense doesn't scare me. It's a good offense. I don't think it's a great offense. I don't think it's Oregon's offense. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, gentlemen. Hey, great show tonight. And then let's get back together next week after a Buckeye victory.
There you go.
Sounds great.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
Yeah,
See ya. All right. Very good, Zach. I think we have had a successful call-in show tonight. We had our one stray caller, but that's okay. He's banned. He'll never be back again, so don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't know if after this episode I might have to make the video unlisted, so if you're watching afterward or something, you might not be able to watch it. I think Mark and them normally do something when they have a caller like that. So I'll check, but if for some reason you can't watch it after the fact, you'll be able to watch it eventually. I just have to figure out what I need to do to try and eliminate that part of the video, since it was inappropriate. But we appreciate everybody that called in and everybody that, behave themselves when they called in, and we appreciate all of you in the chat watching and giving us stuff to talk about as we wait for callers. Zach, do you have anything else to get to before we get out of here?
No, this is fun. With the one glaring exception, but appreciate everybody calling in tonight and giving thoughtful thoughts. And love the Buckeyes. OH.
IO. Go Bucks, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll be back here again on Monday night. We will be back on the post-game show after the game versus Penn State. Mark and Tony and Steve should be back with you Wednesday at 11 a.m., so check them out as well. And, of course, videos and stuff like that posted every day here on the channel. So we appreciate it, everybody. Have a good one.